been?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. Pretty good.
Oh, good.
It's quite restricting all this stuff, isn't it? But probably not for you.
No, yeah, going okay. Euro pound short, pound Kiwi long. That's just fiddly. CAD
Yeah,
yen short. So yeah.
Euro pound short. I like. Oh, I was actually talking about life.
Oh, uh, yeah. Well, yeah, restrictive. You're right. Exactly right. Quite
Yeah,
restrictive.
this
And
is
I
where I
don't
envy people
know.
that
Sorry,
envy you guys that just live sort of out in somewhere
in
remote,
the
so you can.
sticks.
Yeah, because you can just kind of still go for a little walk and stuff. I mean, over here you're having to cross the street every 5 minutes just to avoid people.
Well, we've now been locked down. I think you can only go out for essential purposes
Yeah,
outside your home.
you're all right, though,
Uh,
aren't you?
and there's big fines. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because you got a little farm.
yeah. We
I
can.
could do with that. I could do with that,
Don't
mate.
want to. I don't want to get to the point where we have to eat the geese, though.
I'm
They're our
sure they don't want to
lawnmowers.
get to that point either.
No, absolutely not.
They're like, this is
You know.
worse than Christmas. Yeah.
Oh, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. But yeah, look. In terms of relativity, I think I'm in a far better spot than a lot of people are. So
Mm,
I have
mm,
to be grateful for that.
yeah,
Goodness
yeah,
knows where we end up, mate. It's a situation none of us can control to a large degree, but we have to control what we can control, and that is stay inside and don't spread it. You know,
yeah, yeah. You got
or
to got to do your bit,
don't
haven't
give it
you?
a chance to come to us, and don't give us a chance to give it to other people if we've got it. So
Yeah,
that's the
we've got a
message
little
that
bit of
we're
a
hearing loud and clear, and I guess it's right.
we got a bubble. We got a little bubble in Brighton. There's not anywhere near as many cases here as there.
Oh,
I
is that
would have
right?
thought there would be. Yeah, I don't know why, because we're still a city, and there's lots of people that live here. I was going to say come here, but I guess they're not right now. But I mean, uh, London is rife, really, in comparatively speaking.
Yeah. Look, well, New York and America, they're in terrible,
Mm,
terrible trouble.
yeah,
And now Europe in general is really going well, hate to use the word gangbusters, but yeah, it's
mm,
starting to get a big hold there, isn't it? We had our
yeah.
first death here in Tasmania
Oh, really?
overnight.
Yeah,
Yeah, um, to a large degree, we're somewhat isolated, but
yeah,
once it's here, it's here.
yeah, yeah. Can't get away.
No,
Well, I guess we should talk about the markets. Good
I
morning,
guess we
everyone, by the
should.
way.
Yeah, hello.
Jeff and I just having a little
Have a little
private chat.
chat on the
Um,
side. Well, you do.
so
You really need to, don't you? It's difficult to remain silent on the subject when it's just the massive elephant in the room, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, we are
It's
looking.
3 minutes to well, not even that. Do you look like trading at open, mate?
I don't think so, but I have to say the FTSE is held up better than I thought it would, which is good because I'm building into some shorts here, and I've resisted the temptation to build in too early. I'm waiting for my next level really before I kind of take another short, and I've resisted adding to the short that I've got, which is pretty much the same area because of my belief about the market. But technically speaking, it's holding up pretty well. I'll quickly show you that before we get to the pound trade.
Sure.
Um, so let me do this. You want screen one. Screen one. Here we go. So screen one is this hourly chart here. It looks like a head and shoulders pattern is forming here, which it is. Um, but what would convince me that the short is probably the right timing is really the 15-minute chart, because the 15-minute chart is putting in just a little bit of a trend to the upside. Yes, we're stuck on this daily pivot, so that may put pay to any moves to the downside. But I'm surprised we didn't collapse. I mean, we did have a little bit of a gap down early doors in the morning, but we've held firm, and we've held firm so far on this neckline, and because of that, um, considering how volatile the markets are and how fearful they have been, I wonder whether we might actually be forming a bit of a base here, just to kind of like move to another leg higher before we do go lower. And if we look at this on a broader time frame, I suppose, namely the 4 hour chart, then actually what we're seeing is an inverted head and shoulders. So I think this is the current time frame that is in play, and this is the current time frame that I'm looking at. Now, I do have a probably a sneaky suspicion we might be going higher here. Maybe it comes down to the weekly pivot, which is another reason I don't really want to trade in this little range here. I'd really like to pick up a decent spot to get a decent move back down again. I do think we're probably going higher, but my belief overall is that we go lower. So I'm not going to trade that higher. Sorry. The only thing I would consider is trading a stock higher. Probably supermarkets, but as we open up this morning, it looks like a long to me, and let's see what happens. We've just opened up. It needs to break through this daily pivot, but I suspect if we do so, I think we're going back to these highs and probably beyond. But as I say, it doesn't really match my view. So what I'm going to look for is a stock that I think is may well outperform to the upside, rather than trading the FTSE itself, and see if I can get on top of that. Gold has held firm, and I have got a trade in a gold stock that I'm currently hanging on to, and we'll see how that is going. Early doors, that has opened up. Yeah, just a little bit higher, I suppose. But looking around, just looking across the barometers right now, we've got markets opened up with pretty good. Around about 57% of stocks have opened up, just a little bit bullish here. So yeah, I think looking for individual stocks to outperform the FTSE to the upside will be my play, probably for the first half of the week, and then we'll see where we are if we do actually get to that upside, and then we'll see if we flip positions. But right now, mate, just on my hands while I look for something that I can trade long. I've got a short list, but it's looking like the supermarkets probably would be my first choice. But realistically, I've got to look for something that I might be able to just hedge out some of the risk with. So, yeah, I'll pass over to you for now and let you know if there's anything that really starts to shout out at me.
Righto, mate. I'll set up this pound. Well, in fact, I've already placed the order whilst you were having a little chit chat, and I will share that now with all and sundry. Pound US, and g'day guys. G'day Kumar, PL, John. How you doing, guys? Hope you've had a nice weekend. And everybody else who's saying hi. I hope you've had a lovely weekend as well. So we've got an entry short and an entry long. I said I won't go through these step by step, but if anybody needs help with these this breakout trade, then just give us a hoy. But I'll give you the levels for now. The short order is at 1.2347. So we're going short at 1.2347. And I think that's right. I better just check that. Yes, that's right. And the long order, we're going long at 1.24. Is that right? Just get this right. 1.2443. 1.2443. Okay. So those of you who need explanation on that, then that will be available if necessary. But everyone else should know. If you've been in the room for a while, then you should know exactly. Can't follow the comments. They seem to be competing with each other. Are we competing with each other? I didn't think we were. We're not. We're not competitive by nature. No. We get along with each other okay.
Yeah, we do. We do all right. Let's see if that might just be a misinterpretation of what's said. Let me see, because I can't see the live today. Where's the live?
Oh, you've got my problem.
I do.
Okay, so those of you who are joining us for the first time, we'll go through this if necessary. Yeah, it looks like a nice little flag sitting there, mate. Got to say, interesting.
On
on pound US dollar.
On pound dollar, yes, yeah. Pound looks all right, isn't it? You might need to post me the link when you get the chance, mate, for the YouTube
Okay,
show.
will do.
Um, yeah, I looked at the pound as well. I guess my slight issue with the pound is that I haven't really got my reasoning of why it's going to rally here. And actually, maybe the dollar does have just a bit of respite as well here. I'm not sure, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
dollar's
haven't really
interesting.
the dollar. Yeah,
Always is, of
yeah,
course, but
yeah, yeah,
in particular at the moment, with all sorts of things going on. Trumpy's in hot soup. Now they're giving him a hard time. I see
yeah.
Nancy Pelosi was giving him a hard time there on a news brief earlier. In fact, very nastily, I thought. She was accusing him of killing a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a bit. I don't know.
Well,
I don't want to go there. I don't think it's
yeah,
just
you
ugly.
wonder, don't you, sort of about the political ramifications of all this.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
where they actually, say what they believe and where they say what is good for their political gain.
Drumpf. Go Helen. All right. So we had a small loser on the pound. Believe it or not, we were long the pound on Thursday, and we managed to turn that into a loser with our trade management. It happens, guys. I'll take you through that actually for those of you who were thinking, okay, you're long. How the hell did you lose? You should have won a truckload. And that would have been nice. And had we maybe trailed on a 30-minute chart, these are the things that we need to take note of, guys, as if we've got the trade management right, or if we haven't. And if we haven't, we need to change it. So we got taken in on this bar. Sorry, we didn't get taken in on that bar. That was the range. The low was here, the high was here, and we got taken in with the very next 1 hourly bar. And then, of course, as is the rule, we changed to a 15-minute chart. So when we changed to a 15-minute chart, here's what happened. Once we're on the 15-minute chart, we trail 2 buyer bars in a row, right? So we got taken in here with this candle. And the first 2 buyer bars we got were these 2 buyer bars in a row, that one and that one, which took us below our entry, right? But that is the rule. We have to move our stop to there. And lo and behold, with the next 15-minute candle, we got taken out. And then, bingo, away she went. Now, would that have mattered had we changed to a 30-minute chart? Answer, yes, because we got it taken in here. No 2 white bars, no 2 white bars until we get to here. So 2 bars there, and our trail, our first trail goes to there. And then our second trail goes to here, 2 white bars. Our third trail goes to here, 3 white bars, or another 2 white bars, sorry. Then, let's say that wasn't. Our next one is here, another 2 white bars. Our next one is 1 up. I'll say that wasn't. Our next 2 white bars are up here. Our next 2 are up here, and that would have ended it. If we would have got taken out there, but we would have made, where was our entry? Here. We would have made a couple of 100 pips on the back of, I think it was 100 and something risk, so 1.5 to 1 out of that one, had we trailed on the 30-minute chart. We didn't, and we lost a small amount on that trade. On Thursday, I don't know if you guys followed this on Friday. I didn't, because I wasn't trading on Friday. Well, actually, I was early in the morning, but I didn't trade this session. Looks like that may have gone all right, don't know. I won't go through the pain of exercising or going through that exercise at the moment. Analysis on the pound. Righto. Well, here's the thing. We spoke about this, and we spoke about this at length And I said to you guys over the last few weeks, I'm pretty sure it was the last few weeks, that this is really music to my ears when I see this. This is liquidity central for the big boys down here because of these lows being taken out. So every stop loss and every entry short has just been gobbled up at that point, and that's when you see these markets fly, when that liquidity is met, and bang, away she went. You'll see that on the pound. You'll see it on just about everything versus the US dollar, actually. The euro, the Aussie, Kiwi, they all rallied on the back of this. Maybe not the CAD so much. Oh, yeah, the CAD did as well, I think. So, those are the things that we look for. What is difficult is timing your entry, of course, because once it goes, as you can see, there's just no pullback. It just keeps flying. And unless you're on a smaller time frame and can see a pullback of some kind, it's very, very difficult to get in. Such was the case here to a large degree. Had you looked at that bar and said, well, okay, that looks like it might be reasonable. Not for me, because you're trading straight into resistance. But it was a very, very nice signal off the base, off the triple bottom. They're the kind of things that we're looking for, and always mentioning, or should be mentioning it if we're not, that these higher lows are very, very, very important once you find them. It's very easy to be a top trader in retrospect, of course, and when I say that candle looks great, it does look great now that the market's up here. It doesn't look that great when you're trading straight into resistance, and that's the key for me. If it's not safe to do so, then probably don't do it. The one thing you can take on board is, as long as you've taken profit here, this is the way I trade, right? You can do whatever you like, but if I can take profit here before the resistance level or at the resistance level, then it's okay to take that big stop loss. And in many respects at the moment, that's what I would counsel you to do, because the market's so volatile. If you use tiny stop losses, you're going to get tiny results, and they'll be negative. Generally, they'll be negative because the market, you just can't stand any retracement of any kind on a 30-minute chart or a 15-minute chart. You've got to get your stops out of the way, out of the noise, because this sort of thing happens, and it makes it very, very difficult to trade my normal 30-minute strategy, for instance, because I use tight stop losses. So I've really gone to the bigger time frames, which is quite the reverse of a lot of traders, in particular trend traders who are now finding their entries on 30-minute 1 hour charts, where I normally find my entries on 30-minute 1 hour charts. I'm going completely the opposite and finding them on 4 hour and daily charts, which is cool. As long as you recognize it, that's all good. So pound US dollar for me, as I said, I can see a nice little flag sitting here, and I can see all but a test of the daily pivot. And that flag says to me that there's a strong chance this will break again today to the high side. And if you're willing to trade that, then I think you'll probably get a result out of it. Best place to trade it from is pretty much where we are. What I'd like to see from my point of view, and I'm on a 30-minute chart now, is a break of support. Where that support is probably through there somewhere. And I now have the break of that support. So I'd now like to see price get back up here and retest it. And that would be my trigger to go long. But the closer we get to this resistance, the harder it is to trade, of course. So maybe I'd like to see a flatter line down here somewhere and maybe break through that way, and I can get a good run up at that resistance area. Any more on the FTSE, mate, at the moment?
No, the FTSE's actually moved. It is moving down, but as I say, I think it might get caught at the weekly pivot. No, but I'm looking. I'm just looking at some of these individual names and just seeing where the price action's flowing, and the supermarkets are doing pretty well actually. Out the traps, early doors at this moment in time. We've got a bit of a change of sentiment though. So the long side on the FTSE is looking like it is well and truly under pressure, with around about 16% of stocks now, maybe well, let's call it 20%, just be generous, but 20% of stocks are now positive, which means that 80% are actually negative. It's not tanking, but it is certainly under pressure here, and actually we're starting to get some short-term sell signals in place right now. Now, I've already got my short in place in this area, so I don't really want to add just yet, but yeah, the market is under pressure. The market is definitely under pressure. As slow as it is moving, it's under a bit of pressure here, but
we wouldn't be surprised at that, would we?
Not at all. I mean, it's the fact that it's under pressure isn't really the surprise. I suppose the surprise for me is that it's held up at all.
So long. Yeah.
Yeah, to this point, because we did have a short-term rally on Friday, and it's really the rallies that the thing that I'm finding the most surprising, and the pressure that I thought would come in if it started to turn would have been a lot heavier than it is. So that's why I'm a little bit reticent to say let's just load in here and go short. I think that we might get some flip-flopping around. I mean, I'm not quite sure what trumps the negativity that's out there, that's keeping this market buoyant, but something is still just about allowing this market to hold on. And also,
have you got a gut feel as to why? I don't. I can't understand why it would not just continue to fall, given the circumstances. I don't think the circumstances have got any better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the stimulus packages are giving people some kind of hope right now, and also, that there are maybe conflicting is the wrong word, but there are some points of silver lining when we actually kind of break down the hope for the vaccination, and also China is pretty much back at work as well, or has started to kind of get back to work. So I suppose people are kind of looking at this and trying to make a judgment call on the timeline of it. So the peak hasn't come, but when it comes down to it, we won't be trading the peak, because when the peak arrives, the market probably would have already rallied some, because people are trying to get out in front of it. So I guess that's what's going on here, and also looking at the situation. If we look at this market, which I'll quickly grab the screen for.
Yep. While you're doing that, hi Mike, hi Kevin, hi SF. Glad to have you with us, guys.
Yeah, we look at this the market the way it is right now. Yes, we do have this head and shoulders pattern on this hourly chart, which is negative. But there is a weekly pivot just sat down there, which may well give us a reason to bounce. This is looking at this stage more like a bottoming pattern on the longer term timeframes, and I guess if we look at it on really long-term timeframes, namely the monthly, because we haven't really been at these levels since. Just push that up a little bit, just so we can get an accurate day. We haven't really been at these levels since 2012. Then there will be some value investors making some speculation in this particular area, and the question really comes in: will those people at this stage have anybody that is really going to kind of load in and start selling their shares off if there is a chance that this market does go a little bit higher? And really, and this is the thing, we're down at 5,003 at the minute. I'd like to see 6,000 before I got into more heavy shorting. I'd like to see 6,000, and I guess I'm waiting on that. And maybe the market's doing, maybe some of the market makers are out there doing the same thing. there is still concern out there, but the stimulus packages and possibly some drip feeds of news and data coming through about the speed and peak points of the coronavirus, plus China, maybe it's encouraging some people to try and find some value, and maybe they believe it's at this point. But aside from that, I don't really have a great deal to offer in the way of why, because of course, the market should really be lower at this particular stage, because at this point, there is no possible end to this. There is no announcement of when this is going to end. Just about every country is in lockdown. Now that America is starting to really pick up the pace with the amount of contagion that they've got, then the biggest market on the planet starts to suffer, and then we're all in for a rough ride. So I would have thought it'd be at least a month or possibly even two before we start to look for buying opportunities right now. So it's maybe just a little bit of a freeze. Maybe the initial burst of the downside has subsided somewhat. That some of the fear has subsided somewhat. While people are kind of like looking across the board, but there are also some genuine bargains down here. Yeah, if you're looking sort of 2 to 5 years out, then there are some genuine bargains in this particular area. So I guess the last thing that you want is to pick up an absolute dog of a stock. But if you're looking at fairly solid blue chip companies that have survived their way through this, when the fear kind of really kicks in, that's when the big gun investors start to get their shopping trolleys out. But I think my issue is that the fear hasn't really fully kicked in.
No,
just
I don't think so.
When we were up here, every man and his dog was talking about how the market was never going to tank again, and it was we were never going to hit a recession. I remember hearing an interview in Davos by one of the main players. I can't remember who it was, but it was one of the main players saying we weren't going to get a recession again. And that's the point you start going, okay, now's the time to sort of get keen on the short.
Absolutely.
And I was short up at these points, but the market even wore me down in the end, because I was like, okay, maybe this isn't coming down, and I didn't make anywhere near as much as I should have done. But the same mistake shouldn't be made in this particular area, because and this is what I'm doing. I'm not taking the longs that I see in this area, even though those longs are pretty lucrative. But I'm not taking the longs that I see. What I'm trying to do at this point is continue to the downside and follow through where I believe the market will come down to, which I think is close to 4,000 rather than 5,000. And then when the fear has really kicked in and everybody's like, this market is never going up again, then I want to start thinking about buying up. But at this point, I think people are still trying to buy the dip. So I'm not interested in playing it just yet to the upside.
Yeah, look, both you and I had the same opinion, I think, last week, and in particular on the euro for me, and the Aussie to a large degree as well. But the euro, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I thought it would sell off again, but it's just gone bang straight back to the top of my channel, and we'll have a look at that. G'day, Lewis, how you doing? What about oil, mate? The oil story is very interesting. It just smashed through that latest range again on the daily chart.
Yeah, I don't see the benefit of buying oil. I get the whole argument about price, but I just don't see why oil would trade higher. And my problem with trading anything in this particular area, because of price, is that you are going to still pay for your swaps. And I've been stung on that in the past myself, where I hold on to a market and yes, it ends up going in your direction. But if you get in too early, I mean, you are going to be a little bit early if you're trying to trade in this specific way. We got oil in this area down here. Then I get the rationale, because we are at a level. It's a monthly chart.
You've got your FTSE chart, mate. If you're showing an oil chart.
Okay, so maybe.
Now I've got it. Yep.
Okay, great. So I get the rationale down here. I get the rationale of price at this point, but the problem with it is that there's no appearingly there's no story about oil that starts to pick it up. There's no light at the end of the tunnel of this awful argument that's going on. And you've also got, just about everything that's grounded, that can be grounded, that would actually buy up some of the supply that is being pumped into the market. I mean, it's a weird thing, because when it comes down to it, the idea that Saudi Arabia and Russia will not let oil go to a specific price because they can't afford, the price to be down here for too long, um, is what would happen with rational players. But when it comes down to it, firstly, it's not a rational market, but secondly, they're human beings that are involved in it. So rationality kind of goes out the window, and it actually wouldn't surprise me. It'd be odd. It would be strange. I would definitely grant it would be strange, but it wouldn't surprise me if in the end they just end up committing their own suicide on this stuff, and actually drive the price so low that actually nobody wins, because that's where we're at right now. Nobody's winning, and nobody's going to win. And they both seem to be, I don't know enough about Putin, but what the little I do know about him is that he's fairly stubborn. I know he's a strategist, and I think he's probably quite clever, but he's fairly stubborn, and I presume the same from the Saudi Arabian point of view. And it might end up that stubbornness of not wanting to back down, it might end up being too late by the time that they get their act together. So I'm not surprised actually that oil stays down here, and it wouldn't surprise me if it ended up going down to a ridiculously low level. Everybody's sort of like saying about it not going to zero, and I also get that rationale, but in the back of my head, I'm like, they're going, why not?
Mate, we before Japan went negative interest rates a couple of years ago, we were saying, how can we have negative interest rates?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the one thing
exactly.
that doesn't surprise me about the markets is that it always surprises me.
Yeah, and you know what? The other aspect of this is that they're pumping so much liquidity in that we have been sitting on this house of cards for a long time with the
Yep.
markets, and
Yep.
who knows? Obviously people want to be picking up bargains, and they will do, because everybody knows the market eventually will come back. But the question isn't about whether it comes back. The question about whether, has the beast changed somewhat? Because the house of cards really is getting built up with the US dollar, and the weakness in the US dollar, and the amount of US dollars. I know there's a shortage, but that's relative, because there's still a whole bunch of US dollars out there that are effectively backed by nothing. And it only really takes the player to go, one of the big players to go, actually, we're not going to use the US dollar as our reserve currency anymore, and everything collapses. Comes back in a different form, but everything just collapses. So we just don't know. At some point, you would suspect that it would collapse, and if you look through history, the story has been this every single time, right? Right back to the Roman Empire. When it comes down to it, why was it that the Roman Empire eventually collapsed? And you track it all the way back, and it's really about how they control their money, and how kind of bludgeoned and how bloated each of those societies got during those eras. So the Americans might well be in that kind of bloated phase right now. So we don't know whether there may well be we might be living through a fundamental shift. We just don't know at any point.
I've got a fair idea that we are living through a fundamental shift. What that looks like on the other side, I've got no idea. That's the hard bit. I made a statement to you, I think it was, or in one of these shows, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that I wonder what crypto, or wonder when the days when we'll be trading cryptos only and not currencies. Look, I'm not promoting cryptos in any way, shape, or form. I think there will be something along the lines of a blockchain worldwide, because that makes sense to me. Cryptos not so much, but the blockchain makes sense to me. And how they control that, I don't know. But the whole key word in all of that is control. And the worldwide, whoever they may be, and we've all got our own theories upon that, who control the riches around the world, whoever they may be, are not going to let a little startup called what's that called? That thing,
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They're not going to let that happen. I
Yeah.
don't believe that for a second. So, you know, I've got to
Yeah.
be.
Well, Bitcoin's trading like an absolute dog as well right now. I mean, you know, it's one of those things that countries have to get together on this stuff, don't they? You know, when the countries get together and make a decision and decide where everything's going, then there's stability. But we don't know whether this may actually cause countries just to split away. I mean, Donald Trump's been doing it for such a long time, but it might actually um, you know, it might actually cause a split away. And you know, Helen makes a good point. So we're all, you know, the Chinese yuan, for example, is pegged to the US dollar. What if they decide, actually, you know what, we're not going to go with the US dollar, and it might be China when it comes down to it that puts the nail in the coffin, because it looks like at this stage China comes out of all this better than anybody else. Um, you know, with the way that their society's been run, and it probably is, you know, the irony of it is that it started there, but. But when it comes down to it, if China come out of it better than everybody else, then they might choose not to have the US dollar as a reserve currency. And if they don't, then it will probably be in other countries' best interest to go with them.
Indeed, indeed. Let's bring it back to the market, I suppose.
Yeah.
And we could go and I guess speculate as to what might happen, and that'll get us back into conspiracy theories around how it started. But let's not go there. Mike, I think we just don't know. That's my my big thing at the moment, I suppose. I just don't know. So 6 months, maybe. The
Well, how
Australian
long is it going to
government,
last?
yeah,
Yeah, that's what they're saying, isn't it?
the
They're
Australian
saying 6
government
months.
has just done their package today for 6 months, not for 3 months, like most of the world has gone 3 months. Does that mean they've got a crystal ball? I don't know. Got no idea. I
But the
really
other
don't.
thing about that, Mike, as well, is that it doesn't matter how long it lasts in relation to contagion and how long lockdown lasts, because as a trader, you are trying to get out in front of when the market starts to show some green shoots, and you know, potentially 3 months to 1 month out, so before we actually start to see that the good news happen, is when we want to be kind of starting to change our positions and you know, start looking a bit more bullish again. And that's how we're going to get real value. Hey, LT, that's how we're going to get real value without trying to get out in front of it. We will lose out on probably a massive jump, because by the time that it has started to calm down, everybody's going to be on board already. So what we are really waiting for, really wait for the fear to kick in. So we haven't hit that point yet. You know, we don't want to wait until the fear is starting to leave. We want to try and get to the point where fear is at its peak. And you know, as I say, I don't think it's hit that point. We've had the initial knee-jerk reaction, but we haven't hit that point. When that happens, then we can start looking for value. And you know, we want to be prepared for that particular point. But right now, what we're doing, I think, is effectively continuing to look for downside and look for yen long, look for Aussie short. You know, while we're kind of looking for the next month anyway. Um, Dollar story is a difficult one. I think that's the you know that
Very difficult.
that's what makes it harder. I think that's what makes this whole thing harder, is that we don't really know where the dollar's place is in all this right now, because they are pumping lots and lots of money and lots of liquidity into the markets, which would suggest a dollar short story. But you know, if you listen to Julian, who knows more than probably half the hedge fund managers in the world
Yeah,
about this
most
stuff.
bunch of traders I know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then he will tell you that there's still a shortage of dollars, and you have to listen to him when he says that. You have to listen to him. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to get the timing right, but you can bet your bottom dollar, to coin a phrase, that he will be right on that. You know, he'll be right on the money when it comes down to the fact that there's probably a shortage of dollars. So we're still probably looking at a bit of a dollar long story.
And that goes back to Mike, your other point, which was what's the reserve currency for the investors? Gold only.
Yes.
Answer is no. It's cash at the moment, and cash
Yes.
is US dollars.
Yes, yes, absolutely right. Even though, just on your point of gold, I honestly think gold is the safest place to put the money right now.
And it will get back. Yes, I don't have any doubt about that either.
And the reason, the main reason that I say that is because, well, for two reasons. Julian's talked about the inflation story, but I don't think you have to be a genius to work out there will be inflation. There's no way that governments can devalue their currency and pump so much money into the markets and not expect inflation. It has to just by default. If a currency is weakened, then that means that a commodity strengthens effectively. So there will be inflation, and that puts gold in a pretty good place anyway. But then also you've still got this fear factor. And you've also got a potential supply problem with gold. So gold for me is the play, and I have got a gold trade on. I'm looking to see whether I can add to it, and maybe I do here, or maybe I just wait for it to explode to the upside. But even if we don't get if it comes down from this particular point, or it goes up from this particular point, I still think that there are opportunities to make money out of gold. And I still think it's probably one of the safest places to put your money right now, because at least it's tangible. Gold isn't really affected by governments, really. I mean, to a greater and lesser degree, it is, but comparatively speaking, it isn't. A government won't do something which is going to change the gold price. The only thing we need to worry about with gold is supply and demand. And potentially some inflation. So I think that story is definitely well and truly out there. But it looks to me today, mate, that today to me looks like a tricky market to try and trade through. I don't know what you think about that, but I've just looked at the news and data, and this to me is what we're probably waiting on. Nothing out. It's still on my screen, isn't it? Nothing that nothing that we've got going on today is really going to kind of shape the market to give us a decent a view on where we're at.
Actually, while you're there, let's take a look at what happened last week with the. I can't remember the number now. Unemployment claims. 3 million something.
Yes.
In the US.
Yeah.
And we've got NFP coming up this week, which will be dramatically less than normal, one would think. In fact, I think they've got that at minus 83,000. I think that's extremely generous.
Yeah.
Extremely generous. I think it'll be a lot worse than that.
Yeah.
But is that going to make any difference? It's not the number that anyone's not expecting, in my humble opinion. So this is.
Well, do you know what's interesting? Is that when you look at these numbers and they beat to the upside, it tends to be bullish for a currency, but it would have to absolutely smash it for it to. I find this really interesting. You look at this manufacturing PMIs, and they are forecasting 44.9 with a previous of 35.7.
Yeah, how can that happen?
I don't know. I mean,
it doesn't make sense.
Are they doing some of these calculations on the fact that China was shut down at this point and now it's back to work a bit? I don't know, but I looked at that number and I thought, is that actually possible to get from there? Well, minus, so 44 is going to lead us back up to. It's still pretty poor actually, but I guess from what this is saying, this is saying that they believe. The forecasters believe that in China the peak has been hit, which I find that number a really interesting number to look at, Because are they correct on that? Because if they are correct on that, and this thing is cyclical, then people are, well, I will be as well. But surely the logical thing to do is look around. If we just take the cyclicality of it into account, surely the thing to do is look around and go, right, China going there next. They've jumped up. Now we go here. Now we go, then we go Europe, let's say. Then we go America, to start jumping up. So we see the bottoming out and then a curve back to the upside. And if this number does come out, way above 30, 35.7, but if it jumps back to 44, then do we start to look at this and say, a soft but a soft indication that actually things are on the turn, business wise. So I think this number is going to be fairly key to watch out for. I mean, China manufacturing is a key number anyway, but I think that we should be looking out at that number and making an assumption on what that number, what the final print is on that number, of what's next. Now, it doesn't mean we trade it. That's the last thing I would do, but I would be looking at the next country to see whether their manufacturing numbers have improved, and then the next region, let's say, to see if their manufacturing numbers have improved, because that actually might give us a bit of a picture of the timeline of this thing.
Yeah, look, and that's what we said from the outset. The timing can only be taken from what's happened in China. Yeah. And you have to start from day one and then count forward to if they're, and I guess we've got to believe what we hear, that the numbers are good and they have started to return to work, et cetera, that all then becomes quantifiable in terms of time. So then apply that to, well, let's say Europe next. But now the numbers coming out of Italy are telling me that, wow, this is really not the case. Or
yeah.
I don't know.
I suppose that's
really makes it difficult for me to draw a line through.
But that's what I'm saying, mate. If the numbers out of Italy are saying they're not the case, and yet we get a flash with China that this is going on, doesn't it then kind of lead us to go, right, well, when Italy go back to work and Spain go back to work, then don't we look at the manufacturing print after that? Because doesn't this start to give us an idea of the curve of the thing? Because I don't know.
It does, yes.
So I suppose that's what we'd wait on next. It doesn't mean we start buying the market up by any stretch, but I think these numbers from China as the first infected place start to become more prevalent for us to give us an idea of what happens in the timeline of this thing. Of course, China dealt with it completely different to Italy, so maybe it becomes a completely moot point. But I'm trying to grasp something that I can actually tangibly take as data, rather than guessing and sort of thinking, right, well, what are we waiting for? Because we can't really wait for the news announcement, as I just said. We'll be way behind. So if we're sort of like looking at potential data points, don't we start to look at this and go, okay, that could be an interesting read. Then what is it then that we wait for? And I think we can start to form the jigsaw down here. I think we're starting to put the pieces back in place. If this number falls again, then we're still in the mire. But if it does actually start to pick up, then I wonder whether we have piece one in the jigsaw.
Maybe we do, and maybe we start looking at trading the Aussie against the dollar, if that's the case.
Oh yeah, brilliant point, mate. Brilliant point, and that's the key, isn't it? So I mean, I guess we should go around the grounds, but
yeah, let's do that. We're 12 minutes into my tradable bars. Whether I'm looking at trading them or not is another story, of course. But let's take a little squeeze and see if I can make any sense out of it. And I can, it's not, nothing's really changed for me. Through all of this, nothing's really changed for me. And we've managed to get some nice trades. And we've missed some bloody beauties as well. This one included Euro US dollar, which is the first chart I'm going to look at. And I said last week, and I maintained that I had a good chance of getting to it as well, that this level here, despite the fact that it was outside my range, and if you've been in this show and all the other shows for the last 3-4 months or maybe year or maybe more, I've been saying that this range is sacrosanct for euro US dollar, and sorry, range. You guys probably don't recognize the word range associated with a descending channel. But to me, a range is defined by a high and a low. This is the high side, this is the low side. So whilst ever we're going from bottom to top and top to bottom, to me, this is a range. It's contained price. So as soon as we bounced off the bottom of this some weeks ago, and that was here, we managed to get into this trade, and I never expected it to go beyond here, but it did, and it went well beyond here. And that was the time to start looking for price to come back in here. I couldn't get in because it just went too fast until here, and I got in here and took most of my profit off the table at the bottom, but I fully expected it to go to here, and I was looking for a rally to trade that back to here. Didn't, well, the rally came, but it kept coming and coming and coming and coming. How you trade that short is beyond me, and I didn't, of course. But now look where it's gone to. It's gone straight back to the top of that channel. And what would I be looking for now? Well, I'm looking for shorts. And all I need to see is something of a nice lower high off a reversal situation. I don't see a reversal on anything but the smaller time frames at the moment. So we've got arguable double top there on an hourly chart, arguable lower high on the same chart. Do I trade this here? Do I just jump in here? And well, there are worse things to do, but that's not my MO. I like to trade short off resistance. So that resistance will be this line here for me in the first instance. So I need price to get to here before I can look to trade it down to here. Conversely, find a line to trade off at some stage. But at the moment, that's not there. So I've got to wait for this to get to here. Then I can start looking short. At the moment, can I see that that's a possibility and I'll miss it? Hell yes. That's probably a very telling bar, but that's not the way I trade. I know probably 3 or 4 strategies that would have you trading that right now, and I'm not arguing by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not the way I trade. So, yep, I've got to get to resistance, and then I can look to trade short on the euro. Dollar yen, it's another one of these that got away because wrong time of day, and I pointed this out to you guys last week. The only possible way I could have got into this is to have traded the break and retest of, again, the resistance level here. That's the only way I could have got into this. There's just no way that I could have got into this short other than that, but that's 3 o'clock in the morning for me, so not possible. That's the kind of thing that is frustrating, especially when I pointed out to you guys that this was a very strong indicator. This false break followed by this one, followed by this one, was a very strong indicator that we were going short. Now, that said, it's also an interesting part of the chart, isn't it? Because we were looking for short. So there were many, many reasons to think that dollar yen was going short, but getting in, do you stay in front of the charts 24/7? Well, you can't do that. You just can't. But now that we're getting a little bit of a rally, maybe there's an opportunity to get back in. And if we look at the symmetry on this one, if that's the middle, then we've got a fair bit to go to get back down to here, which coincides, does it not, with that blue line. What's that blue line? Bottom of the channel. So to me, although we're surrounded by mystery and fear and trepidation, these things are still there. You know, the charts are not lying at all. They're really telling me what's going on here. Oh, we've been triggered short into the pound trade. Then we need to do 2 things. We need to cancel the long, so we get rid of that, and we now start trailing on a 15-minute chart. We've already got one seller bar here. If we get our next, if this one closes in 12 minutes time as a seller bar, and I really hope it does, then we can move our stops just past entry. The reason I say that is that I don't like the short here at all from a analysis point of view. I like to trade long here, and I'm hoping this is a seller bar so we can at least get into a profitable situation, because I can see this going long, really can. Why? Well, it's like I said before, when this liquidity comes in, which is everything below these lows here, and if I go to the monthly chart, it's even more obvious. Once we, let me get rid of that. Once we get below these lows here, there's a whole bunch of liquidity available for the big players, and it looks like they've jumped on it. So I don't see them stopping anytime soon, and I think they're going to drive this. Where to? Well, the obvious level is going to be a resistance area. That looks like there to me, around about the 135 mark. That's what, 1,200 pips from here. That would do just nicely if I can get into that move. And from my point of view right now, all I'd like to see is a significant higher low. Again, coming off the bottom, looking for the higher low. Don't need to get the first move, but the second move is where the money is, in my humble opinion. So that's what I'm looking for. And look, maybe it's not going long today. Maybe it's not. So I may well be early with my call. Haven't entered the market. Maybe we do need to come down to here. Maybe we need to come back to this breakout area. Maybe that's what we're waiting for. But rest assured that I'll be looking for that to happen. So a higher low off support rather, whether it's the weekly pivot, whether it's a horizontal level, whatever it may be, that breakout area may be the first one. I'll continue to look for that long until I find one. Now, I spoke about the Aussie, and it's exactly the same scenario. And we saw this very strong rebound off these, the takeout of these lows on all of these currencies against the US dollar. Now, this also is what we just spoke about, reliant heavily on what China does. The Aussie US dollar, I mean. This is in a really good and strong position now to take advantage of that number that Ash just pointed out. As soon as he started talking about it, I started thinking Aussie dollar, Aussie dollar, Aussie dollar. So that's now a play for me. So I will be looking at that number with a lot of interest, and I'd really like to see technical reason to get into this. At the moment, it's a fairly decent flag pattern sitting on a bear trend. So the potential for this to go back is still there for me, and I'll hang on to that. Where it goes to, well, let's put something meaningful on the chart as always, and find an area. That's not real. It's not very strong as far as I can see as a channel, but yeah, it's kind of there. It's kind of there. So I'm thinking this confluence here. It's a breakout area. It's the weekly pivot. It's the bottom of the channel. So I'd be happy to see price down here. And then if that were to coincide with the China number and it's good, then I can totally see the Aussie dollar getting back up into the 65s, maybe even the 66s. So
What's
that
the
may well be.
what's your overall view? Putting that number aside of the Aussie at this particular stage. I mean, is there enough going on over there that would suggest that that it's fairly stable?
Look, when I was listening to the Prime Minister this afternoon, as I was thinking, this guy's doing a bloody good job. Right. And I don't normally say that because we've had that many Prime Ministers in the last 5 or 10 years. It's been ridiculous. But I think they've got a pretty good handle on what they need to do to get Australia through this. And I don't see partisan politics in any way, shape or form that I do see in the States. in spades, and put that down to Donald once again. But I think that there's pretty tight knit and partisan effort on the part of both sides of Parliament here to get Australia through this. That's the one common goal that everybody should have, right, around the world. And as I said, we're not seeing that in the States right now. We're seeing politics still come in, which is ridiculous. But I'm not going to say much more about that. But I really see them trying hard. I think they've introduced a pretty good package as packages go. My one fear is if this does go beyond 6 months, what next? Where does the funds come from then? Because they've gone all in. They really have gone all in. They did it very much so in GFC as well, and Australia in many regards came out of the GFC in flying colours because of that. Now, this to me, as I said, is the one question mark I have, and if it goes beyond 6 months, I think we've got a problem. If, however, in the time from now till then, we look at what they're doing and what China does do, I think the Aussies got a very strong case of rallying.
Really all right. Well, I mean, I'm in with you, mate. I have to say, I think I haven't traded the Australian dollar for a long, long time, but I think I'm going to trade this with you tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
Or today, depends on where it comes down. So I agree with you on that level. I like it down there. If this comes down to that level, then I am in. So yeah, I'm on with you. I think the Aussie is a decent shout, particularly if China is getting back to work. I think the Australian dollar is probably in the best shape.
Yep. There you go, guys. You got consensus on that one from us. Dollar CAD, we also spoke about this one, and we said as if it hits this level here, then the only way I'd want to be trading it is short. That's turned out to be the case. Again, getting into the market here is absolutely incredibly difficult because of the way in which it moves. It moves extremely quickly, and if you'd gone short here, you probably got tipped out here. The volatility is still there, but it happens very, very quickly, and you've got very little time to be in the market, and that's the whole key here. But going back to what I just said, and the way that I always trade is I don't need to catch this one. It's the next one I need to catch that goes down to here. So that's the key to me, is getting in, and that's why I've got a line on my chart. So there's a clear area here that I want to trade from, and that would be there because that's the breakout area, or here, the weekly pivot area. But I'd really like to see it get back to here so I can then get in, and I'm looking for a clear lower high. What's a clear lower high? Well, a clear lower high is a swing, basically. If that were a lower high, that's clear that it's a swing. That's what I'll be looking for, something like that. Not just a candle that's lower than the previous high. That's not what I mean at all. I want to see the market do some work and then come off it. That's what I want to see. So there's no trade there until that occurs. Dollar Swissy, we spoke about this, and this is one that really is screaming at me. And for the weirdest, wonderful reason, I don't know why, I'm somewhat bullish this one, where I'm bearish everything else against, or the dollar is against, in particular, the risk-off currencies, which, of course, includes the Swissy. So I'm looking for a higher low here to trade it back to, I have to go a little bit wider so you can see it, back to here. That's completely against my bias, but that's what I'm seeing from a technical point of view. And just to exemplify that a little bit further, you can see the range that we've been in for the longest time, back to 2014, or in fact beyond there. If I go to the monthly chart, you can see the range. And again, we've come off the bottom of that range, but we haven't gone to the top. So that's what I'm always looking for. And I was screaming for this to come back so that I could find a way in. Well, it's come back all right. Now I'm looking for the higher low. But again, look at the movements, very, very swift and very, very decisive. So it's difficult to find a way in with these scenarios. This is my least likely trade to be in, because I don't like the dollar versus the Swissy per se from a bias point of view. But from a technical point of view, I can totally see that this has got oodles of room to rally, maybe back up towards parity. But yeah, I've got to see what I need to see. And as always, I'm looking to trade off a support level. So I'll be looking for that support level to break, then give me the higher low that I want, get back above here, then I can trade it long. If it goes without me, I don't care. Don't care. That's fine, because that would be then with my bias. Actually, I forgot to mention on the Aussie that I was looking for a short here last week, which didn't trigger. And it was based on the false break of this resistance trade line. It was an entry underneath this bar. Kiwi was exactly the same, and neither triggered, just in case you guys were wondering about those, because I think I did broadcast them in this show last week. Neither triggered, as I said. Speaking of the Kiwi, look, this will tend to follow the Aussie in most regards. Not as reliant on China, but reliant on China, if I can say that in the same sentence. So yeah, this will follow the Aussie. I don't think it's got as strong a case as does the Aussie, but you'll also find that the lockdowns that are occurring in New Zealand are probably going to stand that country in very good stead as terms of a coming out of coronavirus situation. So I'm not bearish in any way against the Kiwi at the moment. I think that's probably a buy as well. So similar to the Aussie, if it came down to a strong support level, then I think that's probably an opportunity to buy into this one. So they're the 7 majors that we do in the show. I did want to say one thing, and guys, we did say last week that we'd be trying to get you into our what we called a 2-minute brief, and Ash and I do that each and every day that we trade. Actually, I didn't do one today because I didn't have an opinion other than what I've just discussed. We're having a meeting about that very, very shortly. As a matter of fact, we would hope to have resolved that so we could get you guys into those briefs that we do on a daily basis outside of this show, because this is a free show. We don't obviously go through everything that we're looking at, in particular for me. And I really want to bring it back into this show. I don't look at the minors in the show. I only look at the majors. And that's the reason, because people are subscribed to what I do on the minors. And Ash also, outside of this show, goes on into the day and into the US session. So that part of his trading isn't available to you guys. But we're trying to make that change. And we had hoped to get that to you today, but that's not the case. But we are having a meeting about that as soon as we finish, actually. And hopefully we'll bring you some news on that tomorrow.
Yep. Yep. Well, I think that's pretty much us wrapped, isn't it, mate? And we'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to follow Jeff on this Aussie story, because I think that's quite interesting. You know, after having the discussion about China, I think the Aussie makes the most sense to me. And we'll have a look to see whether it's going to be the best one to pair. So, yeah, I agree with you, Helen, that they certainly will. They will get through. I think for right now, however, it's pretty much shut down. So it's just a case of when things start to clear. You know, things will eventually clear. I completely agree. I think they will be different, but I think things will eventually start to clear, because, you know, things do, don't they? I mean, things do clear, and if they don't, then we're all done. So yeah, at some point, then you think that there would be some kind of pickup in activity again.
I think it'll be country specific too, Ash. I don't think the whole world's not going to recover at the same time and at the same pace. I don't think that for 1 second, because of the difference in production of goods, not services, but goods.
Yeah.
And, you know, the longer it takes supply of goods around the world, that's going to be a very big thing as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
I think
and
that countries that have positioned themselves, like I just mentioned, New Zealand, and I'm pretty confident Australia have got it right as well. And the
yeah,
fact that we are pretty much on the tail end of this, Australia and New Zealand. We'll be the last ones pretty much that are exposed or have been exposed to this virus because of the geography of the country, the two countries.
yeah, yeah,
So that puts us in a very good position because we've had time to A, get our medical stuff in order, B, get our supply systems in order, because we've known what's coming in
yeah,
advance.
yeah,
So I think, you know, those two countries and those two economies will benefit from that, because I don't think we'll be hit as anywhere near as hard as the rest of the world.
yeah, yeah.
We didn't get our cellar bar, and this is what I was fearing on pound US dollar. I think we're in trouble with this trade, but we'll see. Continue to trade on the 2 bars. We'll see how we go. It's the flu vaccines are not cures, just give some immunity to some folks, sadly. Yeah, some folks, you're right. That's the big question, isn't it, Helen? Who's going to be spared? It's a very, very sad subject to be talking about, but it's probably the reality at this point, in that hopefully that 6-week period is the one that we've all got our hopes on, that 6 weeks, and it doesn't extend beyond that. Let's see.
Yeah.
Righto, guys. That's the show for today. We'll be doing it all again tomorrow. When?
Yep.
Ash?
Back, same trade time, same trade channel at 5 to 8.
That's a date. Don't be late.